because there's a lot of creators on Twitter who are creating stuff that I really enjoy, and and a lot of people really enjoy, and it's cool to be able to like reach out and not touch them, but like reach out and like let them know you're there.
Yeah, and just like let them know how much you love their work.
Yeah,
and ideally, if you don't like their work, maybe just leave them alone.
Wouldn't it be so nice if just the internet worked that way? Where civility was like the primary objective.
Then maybe Stephen Moffat and Joss Whedon and Damon Lindelof would still be on Twitter.
Yeah. How about that? How about that, internet?
I'm Tom Dickinson.
And I'm Louis Midas.
And this is The Cloister Room,
a podcast about Doctor Who and other things.
Yeah, Scream of the Shalka.
Yeah, Scream of the Shalka.
It was certainly aptly named, I thought.
Yeah, you can't really get past that. I mean, there was certainly a lot of screaming.
Mm-hmm.
And most of it was coming from the Shalka.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as naming goes, spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a name, I've heard the name over and over for years, but this was the first time I'd ever seen it.
Right.
And I was very excited to like sit down and see some new Doctor Who, and I was like, this story really is about the scream of the Shalka.
Yeah, no, it's so great. I mean,
it's not like Terror of the Vervoids, where it's like, well, it's not really about their terror per se.
Right. This is, I mean, like, how disappointing would it have been had you sat down to watch this and like maybe they just kind of like yelped a little bit?
Yeah.
I mean, like, you can't have that.
Yeah.
That's no good.
No, but I think it lived up to its name pretty well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What did you think about Scream of the Shalka?
I thought it was a great story. I thought it was really, really fun and entertaining.
Yeah, I actually really liked it. It took me a while to kind of settle into it.
Uh-huh.
But I think once it really got going, maybe by the end of the first or second episode, it just kind of moved along at a good pace. It had a lot of like really good ideas in it.
Mm-hmm.
The characters are pretty good, and it was like, they did a really good job of making a new version of Doctor Who.
Yeah, that's to their credit. I mean, like, Paul Cornell has obviously written for the new series, or I think he has. He has, right?
Yes. He wrote Father's Day.
Oh, right.
And he also wrote the two-parter Human Nature and The Family of Blood.
Oh, right. Yeah. And it definitely feels like it's written by a new series writer. I don't know what that feeling is precisely, but I mean, it feels... Well, you know what it is to me, it feels like they pack in like a lot of references to like just self-references, like references to the show itself, and I like that and I appreciate that. And I do have to say, like, I think like a lot of the jokes and stuff were really enjoyable, and even references to like, oh, there was talk of a dead cat kind of early on, and he's like, oh, he used up his 9 lives rather like me,
Yeah.
So I liked all those little references there.
Yeah, well, and I think in a way it kind of makes sense that tonally it matches up with the new series, because the new series was, I mean, we even mentioned a little bit when we talked about Greatest Show in the Galaxy about how like the new series did seem to kind of develop out of what was going on there, and this was, Paul Cornell was one of the prominent writers of the New Adventures novels, so he sort of came to this by way of like carrying on the Seventh Doctor tradition. So there is a sort of like lineage of ideas there. It's not like they... it's not like Russell T Davies was completely outside of that, nor was Paul Cornell. They were all kind of part and parcel of the same general strain of thought, I guess, about like what Doctor Who was and could be.
Yeah, so that's kind of I like seeing that. I like that sort of.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I just think the whole thing is just, it's very, very entertaining, pretty much from start to finish.
Yeah,
I had no idea what to expect because people don't really talk about it that much, so I don't really know what the opinions are on it.
Well, it's kind of a hard thing to talk about, I feel, because do you even consider it, I hate to use the word canon, but I mean, like, it's hard to talk about because it doesn't fit into a timeline that we're used to.
Right.
Because obviously, you've got Big Finish, you've got, like, the novels and things where you can extend, a Doctor's run by fitting in adventures wherever there's, wiggle room or whatever. But this is a completely new Doctor who's, never been brought up before. And, it's pretty clear that, I guess it's not even super clear that we go from the War Doctor to the Ninth Doctor. But I mean, like, there's certainly never been a suggestion that he's ever looked or sounded like Richard E. Grant. So it's difficult to say oh, well, yeah, there's this other Doctor. And certainly, in terms of now what we know with Time of the Doctor and how that was him using up all his regenerations, assuming that he's only allowed 13 incarnations, then, there's no more. You can't fit any more Doctors in there.
Yeah, it would sure seem that you can't, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, obviously, this is a television show that's being written by writers, so obviously, if they need another Doctor to fit in there somehow, they'll make it work.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, the interesting thing is that it's clearly, like you say, it doesn't fit, and it's clearly like, we basically have to kind of consider it as being a quote-unquote alternate version of Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. But that was not at all the intention of the people who were making it.
Right.
As far as they were concerned, they were creating the Ninth Doctor.
Right.
Which I think was a mark of how, like, pessimistic Doctor Who fans were. Because as much as I do enjoy this, it's like the notion that, all right, this Flash animation, this is the best we're ever going to be able to get. So let's just go ahead and do this. There wasn't any real optimism, like, oh, it's going to come back as like a big budget animated project, or like they'll do a movie about it or something. It was just like, as far as they were concerned, this was it.
So yeah, they really kind of embraced that, I guess, in a sense. Yeah, they really don't leave it... Well, I mean, they pretty much don't leave it ambiguous as to what's going on. I mean, like, it seems like it's pretty solidly understood to be a continuation of the classic series and stuff, and so... Yeah, I mean... But it is... I mean, in fairness, though, who would have thought, knowing what we know now... I mean, yeah, all right, so the show does come back in 2005, but I mean, the idea that a show could go off the air for a decade and a half and then come back, that's crazy. Well, I mean, not really, but...
Well, it seems to be happening a lot more now.
It does.
Like, they're bringing back Full House.
That's true, all right.
They're bringing back the X-Files, they're bringing back all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I kind of see where they're coming from, though. I mean, I think, like, all right, it's been a long time. It's been a decade and a half. Doctor Who's probably not going to come back. I could see them, going with that kind of mentality, and I kind of understand that. I mean, especially with how, I guess... hated it was by the BBC towards the end. So I could see them. I could see it. I understand the lack of optimism. Let's just put it that way. I understand that. I understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, and I think basically the way it came about was based on the way they discuss it I was looking at some of the special features in the DVD.
Oh yeah.
And there's this like 20-minute featurette all about like the troubled production of it, and how like at every stage it seemed like the world was against them. Just like, because from the beginning, essentially, it was sort of dreamed up by the people who ran the BBC Cult website. Okay. Cult being like in the aughts. That was sort of the BBC's section where all kinds of like geeky stuff was.
Oh, that makes sense now. No, because I didn't watch this on DVD. I watched it on the internet because it turns out that you can still access Scream of the Shalka online.
Yeah.
At bbc.co.uk/Doctor Who/classics/webcasts/Shalka. Mm-hmm. And right there on the side there, I guess it's got like categories or whatever to lead you back to the BBC homepage or whatever. And one of them is, it's under BBC homepage, and then under that is entertainment, and then under that is cult.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, that was sort of, and I actually remember back in the day, I kind of sometimes browsed that. Even like probably as far back as like 03 or 02. Because even though I was a youngin' at the time, I was interested in like Douglas Adams, I was interested in science fiction, and basically that was their the BBC was doing all kinds of weird web stuff back in the day, and it's just the people who ran it happened to be Doctor Who fans, and they kind of came to the realization that, well, wait a second, no one at the BBC is doing anything for Doctor Who's 40th anniversary, and that would be 2003.
Right.
So they just kind of basically went around asking everyone they could think of to ask at the BBC, hey, is anyone doing anything involving Doctor Who? Is there anything in the works around bringing that back or doing anything, or can we just kind of go ahead and do our own thing? And everyone's like, Doctor Who, yeah, whatever. All right, go ahead, whatever. Yeah, so it was not like some big initiative created by the BBC to like dream up Doctor Who. It was like some like low level webmasters who kind of accidentally basically like lucked into no one telling them no.
Wow. Well, I gotta say, like, given such humble beginnings, it turned out really well.
Yeah, I think it turned out very well. Specifically, I think the animation was a lot better than I was expecting it to be.
Well, yeah, right? Like, this is 2003 we're talking here,
2003 Flash animation.
Yeah. Yeah, wow.
And another thing they talk about on the DVD is how they tried to do it within the constraints of like internet connections at the time, and they were very adamant that you shouldn't have to see any kind of preloader or buffering. Mm-hmm. So there are some like simplistic shots that are in silhouette or whatever that are actually disguised preloaders. And it's like, wow, this was actually really, inventive. It was kind of pushing the envelope, and I think it won some awards.
Huh. That's really cool.
For Flash animation on the web. Because yeah, I thought it was very impressive. It kind of actually reminded me a little bit of Archer.
Oh yeah.
It's like in the way the characters' faces move.
Yeah, definitely.
Not quite as good as Archer, but
no. But I imagine that the technology's come a ways since 2003. So I imagine the tools probably back then were a little bit less refined. But yeah, no, it is very impressive. And it's weird because there were points where I honestly forgot I was watching a Flash animation on the internet, and that's saying something.
Yeah, and it's very well, like the way the shots are framed, I guess you'd say, isn't like boring and static.
Yeah,
like it tries to make it look like a multicam TV show that would be shot from different angles and everything. It's not just like two people shot where it's like static images of them from like the waist up to their heads where just the mouth is moving. It's not a lot of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. There are a lot of different like shots like that. I think I remember like early on in the pub. I think there's like like you get like some sort of like looking down at like a beer glass.
Yeah,
and that's really cool. There's a lot of stuff like that. It feels like legitimate. Like it feels like it's an actual thing. I don't know. Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah, having seen just like a bit of the Shada thing. And some of the other stuff they were trying to do, like there was one called Death Comes to Time featuring the Seventh Doctor. All of that kind of had me lowering my expectations for what web animated Doctor Who from the aughts was going to be, but no, I'd say it was watchable.
Yeah, definitely. That's really surprising. It's definitely watchable. I would watch it again.
Yeah, I may watch it again.
Yeah. But yeah, so there were special features because like on the website they do claim to have special features, but they're all to a bunch of dead links.
Oh,
so
yeah, poor BBC cult. Well, the DVD has some interviews at the time, which are kind of sad because there's a genuine sense that this is the start of something. This is the start of a revival from Doctor Who, and they're like, "Are we going to do more? Yeah, of course we want to do more." And we think Richard's the right guy to do it. And it's a little kind of depressing to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so, but I mean, like that's like the best possible depressing though, because it's like, oh yeah, they couldn't make any more because the show actually did come back.
Oh, absolutely, and that was something that like basically everyone involved was a huge fan, and some of them went on to be involved in the show itself, like especially Paul Cornell for one.
Right.
And Paul Cornell talks about the day when Russell T Davies called him up and he said, "I'm sorry, I've got some terrible news for you," and then he's like, "Oh, what?" And then Russell says, "We're bringing back Doctor Who on television," and then Paul Cornell is like, he was just too happy to be frustrated.
Right. Yeah, I imagine that would be the case. I mean, like, as disappointing as it is that, this sort of love letter you thought you were going to be able to write to Doctor Who, you can't do it anymore.
Well, they did, though.
Well, that's true.
They were halfway through production, and they were continuing on. They couldn't tell anyone about Doctor Who coming back.
Oh, wow. That's tough.
Yeah, so essentially they had to still keep up the appearances that they thought they were creating the future of Doctor Who.
Yeah, and that's bizarre. But I mean, it's gonna be a tough thing to do.
I mean, but like you say though, I can't feel too sad about it.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, yeah, that's like the best possible outcome. It is.
As good as I think it is, I don't think it's as good as series 1 with Christopher Eccleston.
Right.
And
yeah.
I mean, I would much rather have, the big phenomenon of Doctor Who being this hugely popular television show that lasts for years and years, as opposed to like, oh, maybe we'll do another one of these web animation things.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is, because I knew that this was kind of done. I didn't really know so much that it was done. I mean, it makes sense that it was done as the 40th anniversary thing, but I wasn't really thinking about that. But I was thinking like, oh yeah, like, if this turned out to be successful or whatever, I don't know what metrics they would have used to determine its success at that time. But, if it had been successful, like they could have conceivably gone and made like a whole, maybe not series, but they could have carried it on and kept doing more things like it. But, and I was wondering, like, I was thinking like, what would that have been like if, the 2005 series had never been created, and had this been the only Doctor Who, and this is like the canon 9th Doctor, what would have happened? Like, obviously, like, television as a medium is more accessible, I think, or at least it was more accessible in 2003. And so, it helps that for building an audience. Obviously, a television show is much easier than like a web series of a show that got canceled, a decade and a half prior. But, I wonder if it would have become like the same phenomenon ultimately. Like, I don't think it would have. I don't think it could have. But I mean, like, I wonder how successful it would have been if it were the only Doctor Who.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how successful something can be when it's just like a flash animated short on, cult BBC.
Right.
But I honestly don't know. Honestly, I think it probably would have had a net negative effect on the future of Doctor Who. And the reason I think that is because what it would do is it would establish like a 9th Doctor that you can't really forget about, but that like no one in the future would necessarily want to acknowledge.
That's true.
Like, I don't know. It seems to be like it would be like the death knell of the notion that any future Doctor Who productions would have to stay in continuity with the previous ones.
That's true.
Because you'd think that, if, they do the successful Richard D. Grant thing, it runs for a couple of years and then it wraps up. The next people to come along who want to make a movie or a TV show, they're looking, well, can we just carry on from where we left off? And then people will be like, nah, that Richard E. Grant thing, I mean, it's fine, but we're not gonna like respect that, are we? Because I think it does have kind of like a lower status to it.
Yeah.
Whereas Russell T Davies kind of was able to swerve away from it such that it was dead on arrival and never had the chance to like gain purchase in the fandom's imagination.
Right.
So that there was no real like balkanization of the Doctor Who fandom, as like there was a schism between like the Ecclestonians and the Grantians or anything like that. Nothing like that had to happen.
Yeah. The last thing we need is more division among Doctor Who fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because that causes so many problems because, especially in like you get depictions of the previous Doctors in the new series, you see like a flash of all their faces in in the next Doctor, and they're in John Smith's diary in series 3, and there's all these moments where we see all of the Doctor's faces, and it would be really, I mean, you'd have to omit the cartoon. I mean, how are you going to explain that unless you say like, oh yeah, that was the time when the Doctor, was stuck in a cartoon universe or something.
Well, I mean, maybe they would.
I would be fine with them retconning that and saying, oh yeah, no, I was in some parallel cartoon universe where we were all flash animated.
And maybe that's the means of reconciling this with the broader narrative.
Yeah, just a parallel world where
this is what the Eccleston Doctor looks like when he's in that world, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or the McGann Doctor.
Yeah, it could be.
So this is what one of the Doctors looks like when he's, I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows?
Well, what I like to think is that I'm I guess what you could call like a canon maximalist.
Okay.
Like, I want to throw everything in there, and if someone says, "Oh, that's not canon," my immediate instinct is to say, "Oh yeah, well, how would you know?" And then I'll try to think of a way where it could be. And I mean, like, what if like the Time War did weird shit to timelines, and this is like one of the other options in the goblets on Karn.
Oh yeah, there you go.
But I wonder what option it is, like, because clearly something bad has happened to this Doctor.
Right.
It's actually a little bit like Eccleston in that regard, where he's clearly like haunted by something in his past, although in this case we don't really know quite what it is, or what's up with the Master for that matter.
Yeah. What is up with the Master?
But yeah, so that's my personal way of reconciling it, that there's weird timeline shit.
Yeah.
And you know, there are also some fans, including myself to some extent, I guess, who choose to interpret the 11th Doctor's comment in The Time of the Doctor that he once had an android boyfriend as referring to the Master in Scream of the Shalka.
Oh my god, that's amazing. I want that to be true.
Yeah, I want it to be true as well.
Well, you know, and that's the thing is, you know, yeah, wow, the Master. I mean, you know, he does refer. It's so bizarre.
I think that's the most interesting thing about this, actually.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like it kind of almost feels like an attempt. I don't know. Like they make him a robot, and I feel like it's almost like an attempt to make the show hipper. Maybe, I don't know. I'm like but it's so bizarre, and it kind of works.
What do you mean by hipper?
I have no idea. Like, this is like, you know, a future show. You got robot companion. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, he's better than Chameleon, I think.
He's definitely a step up from Chameleon. I don't deny that at all.
And also, I think Derek Jacobi's really good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that we've seen two very different Derek Jacobi Masters.
That's true. That's so weird. That's so weird that, because you could kind of hear it in his voice. I mean, like, obviously the Derek Jacobi Master in Series 3 is very short lived, but you can definitely tell that's his voice. But it's weird because the body doesn't sync up.
No.
So it's very weird. But he does do a good Master voice. I do like it.
Yeah, I think that character is. I just think that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. The Master's a fun character, and you can kind of, especially like the classic series Master. You know, with the goateed Master, where he's scheming and stuff, and he's just really ridiculous and arch. I love it.
And I just think taking that character and making it into like the Doctor's sarcastic roommate.
Yeah.
It's such a, I don't know, and actually that's another thing that Russell T Davies specifically and intentionally referenced in Last of the Time Lords, when the Doctor says to the Master, like, "Oh, you could come with me," and while the Master's dying, he says, "Regenerate, and then like the Master's like, "I'd rather die than go around the universe with you," and so I wonder whether maybe in some alternate lifetime they remember this.
Yeah,
and he's like, "Oh, I'm not doing that again."
Yeah, could very well be. Yeah, that's the thing is, you know, this definitely feels like it was designed to be a continuing thing, because it does raise a lot of questions, like how the Master got to be this way, you know.
It sets up an arc, I think.
Yeah, and it's an arc that I would love to explore more, because it does seem interesting to me. I mean, like, you know, it could be that it was going to be, I don't know, similar in some respects to the whole Time War arc, but you know, it's still, I would still love to see it.
Yeah, I think I read an interview with Paul Cornell once where he said they had like plans sketched out, and one of them involved, you know, the Doctor or the Master being like the last two Time Lords.
Oh, yeah.
So Gallifrey was essentially destroyed or something, or maybe like all the Time Lords were stuck in the Matrix, and the Doctor had managed to get the Master out by putting him in a robot body. But
there you go. But yeah, you know, that's a story I'd like to know more about.
Yeah, and I don't think the BBC will ever do anything like that, though.
Yeah, no problem.
And they would never authorize that. They are no longer they don't like other media doing alternate Doctors anymore. There was one time where they let Big Finish do that.
Really?
Big Finish had a series called Doctor Who Unbound. Where every episode in the series, and there was 6 in the first series, every episode featured a different actor playing an original new incarnation of the Doctor from like an alternate what if timeline. And actually one of them was played by Derek Jacobi, who was recording it the same week as he was recording this, and he thought he needed to not tell each other about it, so they didn't know, because he thought he was supposed to keep a secret from each production group that he was involved in the other one, because he was worried he'd get in trouble or something.
Wow, I had no idea. He's played the Master twice in 2 different incarnations of the Master, and he's also played the Doctor in an unauthorized, or well, authorized, I guess, but unbound incarnation.
Yeah, and they get some really like David Warner plays the Doctor in one of them. Yeah, there's a female Doctor.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And when was this?
This was, I want to say 2000. I mean, it was around the time this was being recorded.
Right.
0304.
Wow, how very modern.
Yeah. Oh, and one of them actually is just like a play set in an alternate timeline where the Valeyard won.
Oh, nice.
And so the Valeyard's the star. like Michael Jason as the Valeyard. So
wow,
that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but anyhow, they call those Unbound, Doctor Who Unbound, Big Finish calls those. And so Paul Cornell he's referred to this as his Unbound, even though it's not technically part of that, but it's basically been relegated to the same status. It's the alternate Doctor.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I'm trying to think of what I thought of this before I'd actually sat down to watch it, and it did in my mind feel like, oh well, I'm gonna watch this. This is gonna be fun and interesting, but it's not gonna. It's purely academic. I can't take to heart anything I'm about to see.
Kind of like with the Cushing films is how I felt.
Right, yeah. This is just like a curiosity. I'm gonna watch it and I'll enjoy it or I won't, but I can't absorb it. It can't be a part of me.
Well, I think I might have absorbed a bit of it.
Yeah, Well, and it's the funny thing because I really like a lot of the dialogue and stuff, and I feel like Paul Cornell has not, like, if I were a writer and I had this thing that was kind of not failed, but certainly not as successful as I might have wanted it to be, I would have totally lifted some of this dialogue back out and put it into future episodes.
Oh, Moffat does that all the time.
Oh, I know he does. And so, I have to commend Paul Cornell for his restraint, because, like, some of this stuff was like super entertaining to me. Like, I mean, there's like one point where the Shalka are like, "Oh, we understand your craft," and the Doctor's like, "Really? Can you explain it to me?" and then there's what is it? There's an exchange where the Doctor is called not human, and then they ask, like, "Well, what are you?" And he says mildly annoyed. And this is good dialogue that I would absolutely like. I mean, I can't believe Paul Cornell has not put this in his subsequent episodes.
Yeah, and I think actually the whole concept of it, I just love the concept of, like, this monster that its main mode of aggression is screaming, and forcing other people to scream. Yeah. That's such a cool idea, and I actually think it works well with the animation, because, like, the view of all the people around the world screaming, just sort of this sort of simplistic and stark kind of art style of it, just kind of makes it seem more horrific and gruesome. And I just thought that was genuinely, like, a really cool moment.
Yeah. No, I really did like it, and it is super interesting. And the idea that there's, like, this organism that can live in, like, molten rock or whatever, and so it's in like I think they say 80% of, like, all planets or whatever, and that's a cool idea. That's a very Doctor Who idea, that there's, like, this thing you thought was harmless, or not necessarily harmless. I mean, lava can hurt you, but, like, you wouldn't think there's anything sinister about all these planets with molten cores, but it turns out they all have these killer monsters inside.
Yeah. It feels, like, big and epic too.
It does.
Because of how grand the scale of that is, and I think the Shalka are they're a great monster all around.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I kind of wonder, like, I mean, they, like, the way that the way they work and the way they're animated in this, they are realized, I think, pretty well. And I wonder if they were to ever make an appearance in New Who, I wonder what they would look like. Like, I mean, I wonder how they would represent them, because I feel like you'd need a lot of. I feel like in order to do them justice, you'd probably need a lot of CG.
Probably, yeah.
So
they were like, I think this was them saying, like, we're animated, so let's just do something that you can only do on animation.
Yeah.
And obviously there were limitations to what they could do with the animation, but I think the Shalka were really well conceived within those limitations.
Yeah.
As, like, these are the limitations of animation. They're different from the limitations of, like, shooting a multicam drama on a soundstage. So here's what we'll do with that instead. And it's just, I think it's really well judged there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because it doesn't feel like they struggled with anything. It doesn't feel like, oh, this could have been better if they had done this differently. Like, it seems like they did, like, a really, really good job of assessing that and assessing what they could and couldn't do. And I do forget that I'm watching a Flash animation from 2003. It's kind of surprising. I can't believe how well they did that.
Yeah, I like this better than Dreamland.
Oh yeah, Dreamland.
Or The Infinite Quest.
I own The Infinite Quest and I haven't watched it.
It's okay.
I don't know what I'm waiting for.
The animation is more technically sophisticated than what's here, but I don't think it's as good.
Yeah, no, Dreamland though, that was really like almost painful to watch. I mean, like, it's an interesting story, I guess, but it's really hard to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, like, I feel like a lot of TV shows that are done in, like, 3D animation, it seems like that you can tell that when they're lower budget because they have, like, these really weird, like, there's, like, this kind of jerky motion that a lot of the characters have, and, and then there's, like, a lot of other characters that just don't move at all.
Yeah.
when they're not like the subject of the scene or whatever. And that's like it's really almost like painful because like you can do a CG animated movie really well. I mean like obviously Pixar.
Well, that's like ridiculously high budget.
Yeah, right. That's the thing is you need a high budget in order to do that properly. I think. I mean I don't know. I don't know. You probably have these same limitations with hand drawn cartoons, but I just feel like I don't know, maybe it's more obvious when you get to CG. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Dreamland I don't think came out well at all.
What did you think of Richard E. Grant?
I don't know. I mean like I'm kind of on the fence. I feel like if he were to be like an actual doctor, I feel like I would need to see more of him to warm up to him.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like maybe, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I don't know if it's his performance or just the way he was written, but I feel like he was really all over the place in terms of like, he's angry one minute, he's really serious the next, and then he's like doing this really bonkers, crazy thing, like jumping into this monster's mouth. And like shouting with glee as it carries him away. I
hear some of that stuff was improvised.
Oh, really?
Or they just like there was also some stuff apparently that they just like left the microphones rolling. So while they weren't intentionally recording dialogue, some stuff made it in. I don't know. Like he said something like "Ride 'em, big boy" or something like that, and that was an improvised line.
I remember that line. I remember that. Huh? Yeah. So I mean, like, I feel like he would have had the potential to do something really good and interesting, but I feel like this was not enough to convince me.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of somewhere like in the middle. I know Russell T Davies has famously criticized him for like he basically said he phoned it in.
Oh.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but I think especially in the beginning, I kind of warm up to him a little bit more by the end. Mm-hmm. But in the beginning, he just kind of strikes me as boring.
Yeah,
like he doesn't have a whole lot of personality.
Yeah, well, because I was thinking, he seems almost too much like the Eighth Doctor in some ways, and I mean, like, I'm saying that based on I don't even know what, but like kind of I don't know, sort of the like his tone of speaking almost. It just reminds me of like the Eighth Doctor in some audios. I mean, like I don't know how distinct that is, but I don't know. It was kind of reminiscent to me, but it was like I don't know, like a not as good Eighth Doctor.
Well, he and Paul Cornell are like a famous duo for that one film they were in together with Nil and I.
Really? Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so they're both well known from that film. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that I do agree.
You mean Paul McGann though?
Did I say Paul? What did I say?
Paul Cornell.
No, I meant Paul McGann. Yeah, did I say Paul Cornell?
Well,
yeah, he and Paul McGann.
Yeah. Wow, right. That's right. I feel like I knew that somehow, but I don't remember where or how I heard it.
Yeah, it was on Netflix for a while. I don't think it's on there anymore, but it's a pretty good movie.
I'll have to find some way to watch it at some point.
It's a really weird alcoholic comedy.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of drinking in it.
All right.
Is what I mean.
I guess I know what you mean.
I don't know. I think he kind of has ups and downs in his performances. I think I don't think he's the greatest Doctor ever.
Yeah.
I don't think he was living up to his own full potential as the Doctor.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would have been really interesting to sort of see if he settled into it more as time went on.
Yeah.
If they had done more, but they didn't.
Yeah, I would have liked to see that. But yeah, I feel like it's not nearly as immediately gripping as like the Ninth Doctor's performance, where like immediately you're pulled in and like, oh yeah, this is the Doctor, this is like here he is, this is what he's about and stuff like that. And Christopher Eccleston does like a great job of that. And so like if I had to choose, and I mean I guess I don't have to, but if I had to choose between Richard E. Grant and Christopher Eccleston, I mean I greatly prefer Christopher Eccleston as the Ninth Doctor. But I feel like I would have been interested to see.
Well, you could always choose the Rowan Atkinson Ninth Doctor.
I can. That's true. That's a good alternative. Now that is a tough competition. I don't know if I would choose Rowan Atkinson or Christopher Eccleston. That's tough.
Although Richard E. Grant plays the 10th Doctor in Curse of Fatal Death.
Oh, does he really?
Yeah. Have you ever seen Curse of Fatal Death?
I feel like maybe I did, but it was a while ago, and I probably didn't know who Richard E. Grant was at the time.
Yes. So he starts as Rowan Atkinson, and then he regenerates into Richard E. Grant, and then he regenerates into Jim Broadbent, who plays Horace Slughorn in the Harry Potter movies.
Oh yeah.
And then he regenerates into Hugh Grant, and then he's Joanna Lumley.
Right. Yeah, there you go. And that was written by Stephen Moffat, right?
That was indeed.
Yeah, wow.
And that was before this.
That's right. Yeah, because that was for
that was a charity thing. For Comic Relief for Red Nose Day.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and that was back in 1999. So
Yeah, it's kind of funny how, like, even though Doctor Who was canceled, it still wasn't gone. Like, you know, it was still very much in the public mindset enough to have, you know, parodies of it, and people like got the jokes.
Yeah. I think that's an even, I don't know, in some ways that's it's another thing that, like, it's clearly not, you can't really reconcile it into the whole story unless you, like, really try and squint and, like, try to think of alternate universe scenarios. But it does feel like Doctor Who, and it's like there are people out there who are trying to make this.
Yeah. I wonder, yeah, like, if you have, like, a multiverse theory, like, you know, it's entirely possible that, you know, there's, like, Pete's world, you know, you kind of wonder, like, is there a Doctor in that world, and is it perhaps Rowan Atkinson?
Well, there's actually in the Eighth Doctor Adventures novels, which I've never read them, but in one of them, from what I understand, there's, like, a quote where some Time Lord says something like, "Oh, this the Doctor's 8th incarnation is, like, very fraught with temporal continuity issues and peril. In fact, it's so strange that he has 3 9th incarnations," which at the time was intended as a reference to, because this was written when it was known that the new series was going to come back with Christopher Eccleston. So, because this was in one of the last few 8th Doctor Adventures books, so it was a reference to the fact that there was the Curse of Fatal Death, Scream of the Shalka, and, you know, Eccleston. Although I guess we now say Hurt instead of Eccleston.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, there was some kind of attempt within the narrative to acknowledge the strangeness.
Yeah, there you go. I think there's wiggle room in there. You can have, like, a multiverse theory.
Yeah, there's so much wiggle room in Doctor Who as long as you're willing to wiggle a lot.
Yeah, right. You know, there has to be a willingness to wiggle. But yeah, that's the thing, though, is, you know, this is a show about time travel. This is a show about parallel universes and bubble universes and all this crazy stuff. You know, you can pretty much rationalize anything you like. And if you want to have 3 9th Doctors, you can totally go ahead and do that. And one of them can be a Flash cartoon.
Absolutely.
There is no reason why not.
What'd you think of Sophie Okonedo?
That was Allison?
Yeah.
You know, she was good. I mean, like, I'm kind of like, I'd be interested to see. She seems kind of, I don't know. I mean, I guess this is part of it, is that she's kind of, like, depressed or whatever, and she kind of, like, wants to get out of everything. But yeah, so I'd be interested to see what she would be like as an actual companion.
Yeah, from week to week. I mean, I think this actually fits in a lot of ways. It's a lot like the companion introductions of the Russell T Davies era.
You know, that's true. Yeah, that's true, because this would have, I guess, really, like, the TV movie is the first time where you get, like, that much background and on a quote unquote companion.
Yeah, because it's where you, like, meet this contemporary, like, lady, and she's, you know, working her job, she's got her relationships, she's, you know, you see her in her life, and then she runs across the Doctor.
Right.
Which is not something that was a huge part of, you know, the show in its later years.
Right,
in, like, the 80s. So it was something that, I don't know, it does stand out to me as kind of like, oh, that's a little similar to where the show ended up going. But yeah. I thought she was pretty good. She ended up, she plays Liz 10 in Series 5.
Oh, I thought her voice sounded familiar. I wasn't sure. I didn't know the actress, and I didn't actually take the time to look up and see if she'd been in anything else. But that now I hear it. Yeah, well, that's good. She eventually got back in.
Yeah, so she got back in. The Doctor got back in as the Great Intelligence. The Master got back in as the Master. So,
yeah,
and then, you know, the writer got back in as the writer of several episodes. So.
And that one random soldier got back in as the Doctor.
Well, he wasn't a soldier. He was a what was he, like? I think he was a warehouse man.
Oh.
So you caught that?
Yeah, I did catch that. Well, like, you know, I feel like I remembered you saying something about David Tennant being in it, but you know, so I was kind of like, that was in the back of my mind. I was waiting for it, and then we got to his like one line, and then, you know, he dies or whatever, and he has this scream, and, you know, I do love David Tennant's scream. Mm-hmm. Like, he has this sort of, like, howling, I don't know, high pitched scream thing, and I love it, and it's very distinct. But you know, he definitely goes all out in this. He really does make use of that one line he has.
Yeah, the story behind that is apparently that he was around the studio the same day, because the next studio over, he was involved in a completely different project. Huh. And he got to chatting with some of the people who were in there, and he realized they were doing a Doctor Who production. And he just got so excited, and he was desperate to be involved. So they took the role of Warehouse Man and split it into Warehouse Man 1 and Warehouse Man 2 and gave like 2 of the 3 lines to David Tennant, thinking, well, this guy really wants to be in Doctor Who, so we'll make his life. Well, this is his only chance. So although actually he was funnily enough, he was in a couple of different Doctor Who Unbound things for Big Finish as well.
Oh, really?
So
wow. He was doing everything he could to get in Doctor Who's orbit.
I guess, and it worked.
Yeah, it did. That's networking for you.
Mm-hmm.
Just your foot in the door.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, wow. Yeah, this is like a meteoric rise. Here he is. He has 2 lines. And, 3 years later, he's the Doctor. This is...
Wow, 3 years.
Yeah,
wow.
3
That's
short
right.
years.
It's such a short period of time.
It is. It's really crazy.
This thing, the main effect it had on me was making me really, really want to see more Doctor Who from Paul Cornell.
Yeah.
Because
definitely.
If this is his, early first stab at attempting to establish an era of Doctor Who,
mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking, like, what if they just let him take over the show?
Yeah, this is like a story that I really, really liked. And I mean, I would love to see, like this is like, because this is it. This is the format is like, you have the showrunner writes the opening episode and then they write the finale too. And like, so you can see like all these things that are like established as like the arc for the season. And, it sets up, all the characters and stuff. And yeah, it's like super interesting and I really like it. And I feel like I could totally see this as the series opener with Paul Cornell at the lead,
Yeah, he doesn't seem to want that though. Like he keeps getting involved in Doctor Who projects and saying, okay, this is the last time I'm ever going to do anything Doctor Who related.
Huh. Okay, so yeah, no, he's not a candidate then.
Well, he says he's not.
Well, this could be his game all along, is that he does the polite refusal thing. Like, oh, I couldn't possibly have another Doctor Who episode or whatever. Next thing you know, he's ingratiated himself such that he can be showrunner.
Well, I think he was tired of like just being only associated with Doctor Who in people's minds, like being that Doctor Who guy. But then he kind of he's had a somewhat successful series of novels. I say somewhat successful, a pretty darn successful. He has 2 novels with a third one in the series coming out in a series called The Shadow Police. Which is actually very, very good. But, yeah. So, and I think after that, he kind of lightened up a little bit about Doctor Who, and he wrote a comic story called The Girl Who Loved Doctor Who.
Oh, I think I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, and that was in 2013. And he said at the time, "All right, this is probably my Doctor Who swan song. This is the one Doctor Who story left in me." And then all of a sudden, earlier this year, it was announced that he's doing a 4 Doctors crossover for the new comics. With the 10th, 11th, 12th, and War Doctors.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, so that's coming out this summer.
Yeah, I think Paul Cornell is like a Doctor Who iceberg. He says he's only got a little bit left, but there's a lot going on down there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Doctor Who beneath the surface.
One would think.
One would think.
Yeah. I do need to get around to reading more of his novels, though.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. Now I'm kind of wishing that Paul Cornell did have like a thirst for power, because I would give it to him. I would say he should have all the power.
He's out there on Twitter, so if you want to tweet him some power,
I'll tweet him all the power I can give.
I really like the military characters.
Oh yeah.
I liked Greaves.
Oh yeah, Greaves.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was great. I loved his sort of attitude. I loved that.
Yeah, it's just like a little completely unnecessary. That there didn't need to be anything to those parts. Yeah. They could have just been the most generic, like military people. But they, I forget what the other guy's name was.
Yeah, I don't know.
Kennett.
Yeah.
But they just took those and made them memorable.
Yeah, it's a good job there, military guys. And getting back to like all the sort of classic series references, I liked that one line where what's her name, Allison meets the Master for the first time, and he's like, "I am the Master, and you will come to like me," and I loved that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fun because there's a lot of little references, but none of them seem like they would be overbearing or alienating.
Yeah.
Like there's no like, oh, I remember when I was fighting the Fifth Fleet of Cybermen and etc. Like nothing, none of like Ian Levine style Attack of the Cybermen. Like, actually, let's explain the continuity of the planet Telos and how that's sometimes the Cybermen's homeworld, but they also say Mondos is the Cybermen's homeworld. So let's explain how these 1960s stories relate to each other, and it's 1983 or whatever year it was. So there's none of that like absolutely ridiculous continuity stuff. Like the Time Lords aren't even mentioned, are they?
Oh no, yeah. I do not think they ever get a mention.
Which, and similarly, it was, a while before they were mentioned in the new series. So
that's right.
I think it's a lot of like, just generally being on the same page about what was right for Doctor Who next.
Yeah, it really seems like they're kind of firing on all cylinders with this, and they hit like the right balances.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I really like it. I do kind of wonder like what was going on with the Doctor's hair though. I'm not sure what that's supposed
to be. His hair?
Yeah, like that's sort of like how it kind of curves around his whole face.
The general character design was a little, for the Doctor,
yeah.
He looked very kind of like, he looked like a vampire.
Yeah, he kind of did.
He looks like a bad guy, basically.
He kind of does. Some of the elements of his costume kind of feel like the 11th Doctor's a little bit, but like kind of like an edgier, darker way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm thinking of the 11th Doctor's later costume when he's got all those layers.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, overall, like I feel like if there was one thing I would have wanted him to be a little friendlier looking, or maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's the point. Maybe he's supposed to be sort of vampiric.
Yeah, I think they were trying to make him seem like an outsider, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that sort of works, I guess. I don't know.
It does. I do think it was a bit over the top, though. So next, we're going to do 2 stories, and that would be the Reboss Operation and the Armageddon Factor.
That's right.